So I leave the floor to you, and thank you for coming here in Italy.
Thank you. Thank you for coming all. I'm very happy to see you all. Okay, you can hear me now? What I explained yesterday is the work that I finished in 1986. After 1986, I worked in another issues related to the same issue, however in the economical level, not in the environmental level. So I go to economy, then I go to the environment. And after 20 years of research, now I started to explain the idea. In the beginning, I noticed that the people at first they reject the idea completely, and gradually through discussion they start to accept some of the concepts. What I'm arguing is, no matter what we do within our system, we will have environment that is not sustainable whatsoever. No matter what we do, we're making researches, conferences, agreements between countries, we will end up by environmental pollution, climate change. That is inevitable. That's our destiny. Unless we change our system of socialism, capitalism, whatever, we have to look for another system that gives the power for people to make their own decisions. That's what I'll explain today. Now, this is a reminder from yesterday's work. The traditional environment that we like was created in the past through certain decision-making process that has certain property rights, human rights, agreements, local rules, conventions. These mechanisms generated these beautiful solutions. But what environmentalist architects planners are doing now, they're looking at these end products and they are copying some of it. They had a filter. Okay, I like the dead end street, I'll pass it. I like the dome, I'll pass it. I like an overpass, I'll pass it. I don't like it, I don't pass it because maybe it's not suitable for today. Now my argument is that if we liked this, and if this, the process generated this, if we work on this, we may generate something else that is much better. As if you ask Picasso, okay, you drew 5 nice drawings. You should stop drawing now. You should copy the previous drawing. That doesn't make sense. We free his hand to give us more drawings because he managed to give us nice drawings. The same here, if we allowed or we went to the process of the past and we saw how it works, how it generated a product for the people of the past, because the people of the past are different than us. They had lower technology, they did not have the materials we have, they did not have the capabilities we have. If we use those processes with our contemporary fascinating materials, technology and so on, we should produce much better environment. Now this atmosphere that generated a lot of questions about what do we do as architects and planners. So if you like architects and planners, if you imagine that there is a big mountain and we carved in that mountain a cave, as if the architect or the planner inside that cave, separated from the whole mountain. He's operating within the capitalist ruling system. They do not question the larger framework. That's our situation now. What we need to come out of this impasse is to question this big mountain, how does it work? And we should not accept what is imposed on us in terms of economic, ideological systems. For example, a planner is asked to plan a city. He will do the job very well. and he make the city works very well. But that could be on the expense, because to implement that system on other sides, because he draws through taxes money from other sides. We need a system that is just for all, that brings together everybody up. We don't need a system that develops some and damage others. So humanity is searching for a system that is open and transparent, a system that is based on meritocracy. This is what philosophers do, planners do, economists do. After all, history has ended. Fukuyama, as you know. And with the fall of socialism, capitalism triumphed. And there was almost no other method of running the society except capitalism. It got worse with globalization, that freed the movement of capital, and through privatization that monopolized, as you know, providing infrastructure and so on. But the system that we are using now generated poverty, inequality, climate change, and so on. So if we look at the production of current economic structure, you will see that Australia needs maybe 5 or 6 global Earth, so we could live in the same way as Australians. See how much we are polluting. In third world countries, they always say, well, we are not doing well because we are ruled by bad people. We may do very well if we are ruled by a system that is democratic, transparent, and so on. Even so, I argue, if we are ruled all by a very transparent, democratic system like Sweden, Norway, we will pollute the built environment. So our destiny is this chart. For example, if we live like the United States, we need almost five global Earth. And this chart shows how many countries are needed for the people of that country to live in the level standard of comfort. The South Koreans need maybe 8 times their country's size to live in that level. Spain 3 times, UK 4 times. So we have to look at another system. Among the well-known people, I'm sure you know, most of you know about him, David Harvey. He's a geographer, and he's one of the best people criticizing capitalism. To summarize his argument in a few sentences, he says, capitalism appears to be liberating force, but it's dominating. He argues that with capitalism, the skillful people are stripped from their skills for the manufacturing industry. Capitalism come up with the definition of civilized society, which is kind of one where workers do what they are supposed to do, and it always talked about pre-capitalist society as being uncivilized. And he talks about how those corporations manage to sell their products, and he gave a very good example. Why do I have to buy everything new? Why I don't use my grandmother forks, spoons, and so on. And among his argument is that with the credit system, we are consuming from future generations' workforce for our comfort. Among his argument is that we need a state, but not a capitalist state. And when we say a state, everybody thinks of capitalism, but we need another sort of state. And I searched to answer for this question, okay, what type of state is it? I couldn't find an answer. What is the role of the state? I couldn't find an answer. Among most scholars, Maybe I spend for 15 years reading. Okay, everybody complaining about capitalism. So what's the answer? Socialism failed. Where do we go? For example, when a broadcaster asked David Harvey, he said, well, how about what Gandhi did? Villages that are quite independent in their production, in their living, and so on. He said, well, maybe if famine hits a village, you need other villages to cooperate with them. So you need sort of state that redistribute wealth. The issue for me is that the minute you say, okay, we need a state that will redistribute wealth, we created a body that controls others. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. A central body that controls the people. Among the thinkers, one British guy called Paul Mason, and he was arguing that for the last 200 years we were following Marx, who talks about labor, and that with the new technologies, computers, nets, and so on, labor is not as important. So we have to look for other sources of argument. And he suggests that it is a management, is the management of society in the favor of the poor or the social justice. So he suggests that we should abandon the concept of labor as a central argument in Marxism. Again, my question is, who decides, who acts? So everybody says, I call that in Arabic, yajibat, yajib, yajib, yajib. Everybody says, we should do this, we should do. Okay, who does it? This is the question. If we say, okay, we need a body to do it, history had showed us that that body who will do it becomes an entity in itself that controls others, as it happened in Soviet Union. Now this is new movement again by Christian Felber, who was arguing that our constitutions, I mean in the West, that gives the power to individuals were not well utilized, that the companies and our societies, through interventions of companies, production and so on, gave the money a concept of being an end, not a media to create societies, and that we should change that, in which money should come back to be a medium and not an end in itself. And he proposed, he has a very interesting video, you can see it in YouTube, and he proposes a method in which one of his ideas is that we as society should fight for the common good, and we as individuals can see the performance of the different companies and whether they are cheating in their income and whether they are producing goods that help the societies and so on, and then we should as people collectively vote for or against the company by buying or refusing to buy their products. And he generated this chart. Now I'm reviewing the existing ideas that are trying to come out of capitalism. And this is one of the group called RBE. Again, they say we should distribute wealth in this fashion, in that fashion, and so on. One of the interesting ideas I came across is by a person called Richard Florida, and he has a best-selling book, The New Urban Cities in the United States. What attracted me in his argument is that he was saying that he noticed in some cities in the United States and Canada, if the percentage of owners of the dwellings goes up to 75%, the city becomes a bit, I don't say lazy, but I don't know what the word he used. He says it's not that productive industrially. However, if the percentage of owners of properties goes down to the 50, we expect the city to be much more lively. It produces more goods because people are working more than others. Now for me, this is not acceptable. Why is that? I gave the example yesterday of the pyramids that was built, and we like it maybe as architects, but how many Jews were killed building that pyramid? So you can always say, okay, I'll build huge monument here, and you slave laborers from other countries and you bring them and you build that monument. So you have something fantastic in reality, but it is unjust. Here is the same example where an author was saying that the city that had more rented apartment or units produces more goods. Of course it does, because those people living in those apartments are almost slaved, because they are younger generation, they did not own their property, so they have to work harder to pay their debts of education, of whatever. But the question is, how do we do it? How do we solve it? If all cities are not working very hard because the owners are almost 100%, how does it work? I'll explain that. One of the interesting approaches is Jeremy Rifkin. He's from the United States, and I think he's an advisor to China and Germany, where he was arguing that the revolutions went through 3 stages, first, second, now we are entering the 3rd revolution, because each revolution there is always in the society a method of managing products, powering products, moving products. So it was in the beginning, in the first industrial revolution, it was coal, telex, the engine steam, the steam engine. Then with the second, telephone, that happened in the United States, they used the telephone, the car, and the gas, Texas gas, Texas oil. The third one, which is the Internet of Things, in which cheap energy is being produced through solar, wind, and so on, and the internet made accessibility to everybody possible. And that my problem with him here now is that he's saying movement from ownership to access. For example, you don't have to own a car to move one place to another. You can use Uber, okay, and so on. Now, this is a brief history or brief description of what others thinking in terms of trying to move out of this capitalist impasse. What I'm suggesting now, we start now, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to convince you with, okay? Let's look at the housing production, for example. Now, this is a housing project that is built by the government. It looks fantastic, but how much did it cost? And how much waste it generated to build this one? This is a project that is that's built by a developer who wants to make profit. Therefore, he will minimize waste, he will maximize profit, and he will produce something reasonable and good, sometimes much better than this one. This is made by people who did not have access to resources, and they are very poor, and they collect the garbage almost from everywhere to make a house. Even the site they select can be one of terrible site, any site, where the society's authority cannot reach them, and they leave them alone. This slide explains the dilemma. This is in Bangladesh, the parliament. This project won the Aga Khan award, and it was made of concrete in a country that does not have gravel for concrete. These are ladies in their 70s breaking bricks, they make less than $1 a day. So the gravel can be used, the brick they break can be used as gravel for concrete. So in a country that does not have stone, they built with the people's money a parliament. A parliament that's supposed to represent the poor people. This is an idea of how wealth could be misused. I'm sure you all know about these things. Now, when the people had the chance to act, and I'm showing you now examples of poor people, not rich people. Imagine what can they do if they're rich. Poor people reuse objects always because they are poor. A tail of a rocket in Afghanistan, seats that were used as flower books, tiles that were used as seats, kitchen sink that was used as steps. This is in India, where they resell the remains of the building to be reused again. A refrigerator that is used as storage, and a space that when you see it you think it is disaster. However, if you look at it carefully, each centimeter of that space is very well utilized. But they are poor, and this is our problems, that because they are poor we thought that they don't know how to do things. And this is in Taif, where the curtains were used as screening for privacy. Central Asia, I think Northern Africa, where the space are reused. Now, I explained yesterday, I'll try to explain it now again, that the more power people have, local power people, the more power they have, the more they try things, the more they communicate, the more they might find a good solution. That solution will be copied and improved, and then we'll have conventions. Then what rules the society is not rules and regulations. What rules the society is the conventions that the people created. Therefore, each city should have its own distinct convention, because its location is different. Even I argue each quarter should have its own distinct convention, because its situation is different. So conventions could be sometimes similar, but if one looked in more detail, one can see the differences. These are conventions of making a house, conventions of decorating an arch, convention of opening windows around the courtyard, and so on. With low technologies, people manage to do fascinating solutions. Now I'll give you one example of how, if the people had the power, we could save materials in this world for sustainable environment. Because there was, in the traditional environment, in the Muslim world, people had the right to revive a land. The legal system divided land into two types: owned land and unowned land. Anybody has the right to work in a land that is not owned by anybody and that does not have traces of building. So he becomes an owner without permission of the state, and this is important, without the permission of the state, because the minute we say a permission of the state, there will be an upper hand in the society that will give the people land, and a lower hand in the society that will need the land. So there is good market here for the land to become a commodity, and the system fights the situation in which the land becomes a commodity. So it almost reaches a zero level in terms of economic value. So this system of reunification through responsibility of maintaining the built environment on the people. Now I'll give you one example how they managed to solve that problem of discharging rainwater. Now in our cities, I don't know how it works here, but in the Middle East, a city usually discharges its rainwater through planning by a commission that is responsible for this task, that it makes channels in the street and the water runs from the roofs to the streets. In the traditional city it works differently, which I'll explain now. Now this is, for example, in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia, that the water goes from the house to the street. Everywhere or almost, from the house to the street, collected to major street. This is in Istanbul, this is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But in the traditional city it works differently. You see, the environment is almost compact. The water runs from a roof to roof to roof to roof as rides. If we are in this building and there is next door building revived their lands after us, the rainwater of this building will discharge to the next door property. So the rainwater of this property has to be maintained by the next property. Because they built after this property, they have to maintain the canals in which the water of this property runs. I know now all of you are saying, what the hell is he talking about? Why do we have to care about rainwater? I don't want to live like this. What I'll say is the following. You don't have to live like that, but companies will appear to take care of this responsibility. If you want to take care of that responsibility, we as society saved the money that can be spent on those institutions that take care of water discharge. So we are saving money in the society to be used in other things like health, like if we can do it freely, why not? So here in Tunis, the rainwater goes from this roof through here to this roof, then again to this roof, to this. This is in the market, the water goes through here. The whole city of Tunis, Tangier, Jazair, Algeria, from one roof to another roof, and then sometimes to the street. And this part of the street becomes the right of this property to discharge rainwater. Nobody can block the rainwater channels. And this is interesting. There is property here. The water collected in the roof goes inside someone else's property. It passes through inside the house. Because this guy came later, he revived the land, he took it for free. He has to deal with the water of the next property neighbor as constraint. As if there is big rock there, he has to deal with it. So he has to deal with that water. And conventions will appear to make it very simple and very easy to them. When I built my property, what's wrong with making a pipe from my neighbor's house to the street or to somewhere else? And this is a case that I found in the books of jurisprudence, where somebody, the owner of this house, complained that a water spout of his neighbor is in top of his staircase. Of course, this is not acceptable now. But the jurist said, no, this guy who came later, he built the staircase much later than this. So the water spout existed before the staircase. The person who built the staircase should have not built the staircase. So if you like, the built environment is accumulations of decisions. Now what we do in planning, I'll take the extreme position, so I know you will argue with me, and we argue to solve the differences. So I'll take the extreme position and I'll be very bold. So I say now that in the traditional environment, because of there is accumulation of decisions, each layer of decision, when it is done, the next layer of decision is made very carefully, because we see with our eyes the existing situation. It's not hypothetical. But now when we make planning, most the decisions that we make in planning are hypothetical, because we did not build the first layer and we did not see the first layer of decisions outcome. And this is another example of course, this is these are poor people. Let's not confuse the issues. These are very, very poor people, and they managed to solve rainwater by using mud. Mud is very susceptible to water. If you build buildings out of mud, and when it rains, they dissolve. So you need very skillful ideas to solve this problem. Although they are very poor, they managed to solve this problem of rainwater. Imagine if they were not poor, what could they do these days with these new technologies? So gradually, the water goes from this to this property, from this to this, from this to canal or desert or river or whatever. But it does not have to be that way. With the advancement of new technology, maybe the sewage water could be treated in the site itself through digesters like these. Ask yourself a question. Why do you have to go to the toilet? Do it. It goes through pipes to another pipes, collected in another pipes. Then to walk smoothly, it has to be in certain slope. Then you have to take it up again through pulling it up. Then it goes back again. Pull it up, down, pull it up. Why do you have to do that? Treat it in the site. Get rid of it in the site through bacterial. So they have these new digesters that you can get rid of wastewater on the site. I'm not saying that you have to use this. What I'm saying is that if the people had the power, we'll have new ideas. That with the central intervention now, the people were stripped from the capacity of creating these new ideas. And that is one of our problems in the profession. Examples from the internet there's so many companies, so many ideas about getting rid of waste in the site. Now, how can you empower people? If you think of any project you want to do, let's say you want to make hospital or university or airport or factory of anything, you need usually three things. You need resources to buy the land, to buy the equipments. You need cash, resources. You need permission from the states. These days you cannot build a factory or open airport or farm without permission from the state. Thirdly, you need knowledge. If you go to the dentist, he knows how to pull your teeth. Somebody else cannot do that because he has certain knowledge. Very simple. So we need these three things. These days, you can buy these three things with money. You can, sometimes you get permission from the state through corruption. Sometimes in Western culture, you cannot do that. So your project will stop. It might be good for the society, but you will lose the opportunity. And if you don't have knowledge, and if knowledge is patented, you cannot do that, anything. But you can always hire experts to work for you. So with money almost you can do everything these days. That's why I think it's capitalist society. Now in the traditional environment, all these three were free for those who managed to get it. I'll explain that now. As there was revivification of land, the people can revive the land. The people can get the resources, aluminum, iron, uranium, whatever. If they manage to reach to it and possess it, they become the owner of it. Now you say this is bizarre idea because everybody will go and take the gold. I'll explain this. Okay? If everybody brings gold, the price of gold goes down. People had access to land, to material goods. Okay? So resources are free. Permissions is also not required for any project or any action of investment. You don't need the permission of anybody, because the minute there is an institution that grants permission, that institution could manipulate the permission. And that happens often in third world countries. Royal family individuals, ministers' relatives, and so on, they get the permission. Others who are much qualified, they don't get the permission. Sometimes even in the Western culture, you hear about stories where this guy managed to get permission, he did not manage to get the permission. In the traditional system, how it works, you can do anything as long as you do not damage others or the environment. You will have the permission. If you damage the environment or others, you will be stopped by the people around the project that you are damaging them. So the people around the factory that are damaged have the right to stop the damage. Now you might say, well, but I'm sure you will say that, well, but somebody will make a factory and he's powerful enough and he will damage others, nobody can stop him. Remember one thing, when we always ask these questions, we asking the questions from a capitalist way of thinking. We are thinking as ones who are influenced by the capitalist society, because you always think that there is one powerful person, one powerful institution. If we open the door for resources, permissions, and knowledge, I'll explain knowledge now, for everybody, people will become closer in their income. For example, you may think somebody wants to make a mining well and he will hire 100 people. Why do I have to work for you? I will work next to you. So you cannot hire me. We will become partners in digging that mine. We will become partners in making a farm. You cannot hire me to work for you on your farm. Whether you like it or not, we have to work together as partners. Of course, people can hire other people, but the wages will be very high because there is no unemployed people. Because everybody has access to resources, everybody can create his own business. Knowledge is different. Knowledge in the traditional system, if somebody had a secret of, let's say, a patent for a medicine, or he can keep it for himself. But if others manage to open that secret, they have the right to use it. I'm sure you will argue with me about this when we finish, because it's interesting. I'll explain it further. But think of it that most discoveries made were not benefited by the people who made it, except in the last 2 generations with the computer. The guy who invented the television, RCA, managed to reap the benefit of that. The guy who invented the jet engine, Rolls-Royce, took the profit of manufacturing engines, and so on. So not necessarily the people who invent are the capable people of improving the idea. Just imagine one thing, that the iPhone is not closed and it is open for the young generations, 10 to 15 to 20 years old. What can they do with this iPhone? Hundreds and hundreds of new ideas. But we cannot do that. Anyhow. And you say, okay, I'm sure you'll argue, you'll say, I'll explain this later, but then knowledge will not progress, we will not benefit. I'll explain this later. So if we have access to these 3 resources, knowledge and permissions, people will become relative in their income to some extent. And then the market will respond. If the people are relative in their income, they won't be a businessman that will make fancy yacht, because there will be no customers for that. They won't be a businessman who will make very fancy watch, because there is no customers for that. China will not make bad products to be consumed by the lowest class people, because there is no poor people. So the production in the market will be very close in their qualities, but with huge varieties. Why? Because the people are working now as partners together. Not one company like McDonald's or like Starbucks holding the threads of all businesses and implementing ideas. No, people are partners because they are all close in their income. They have to work together and they have to compete, and then we'll have diversity of watches. Here I'm trying to show that if the people had access to resources, knowledge and permissions, we will expect the people to be very close in their income. Maybe somebody will be richer than the other 2, 3 times, 10 times, but not 1 million times as it is now. So the production system will be a group of people work together to make company. Nowadays, some people has no money, maybe they are indebted. Some people are rich, very rich, and they have their own companies in which other people are working for them. Now, the material goods that we consume these days, you can classify them, I'm sure you all know this, into 3 types. Necessities, like the mobile telephone these days. Needed things like milk, shirts, and so on. And complementary, car, maybe in Italy, in Switzerland, but it is needed in the United States, necktie, and so on. And almost each product humans produce goes from complementary to necessity, like the iPhone. When it started, the phones were complementary. Gradually, they became needed and then necessities. I talked about this. Now, if we look at our societies today, wealth is generated by banks. If you deposit 30,000 in the bank, it becomes, I cannot explain this now, it becomes 270,000, because they take your 30,000, they keep maybe 3,000, and they give the others as credit for others. But if it was not like that, it was based on a material that carries its weight, its value, like gold, when the bank take your golden coin and he give it to other, the bank will not have anything. So what is existed in terms of wealth is materialized in the gold or silver or whatever. It cannot increase. With money, they can always print money. They can always print money. What is this leading to? More borrowing from the people for more consumption. So they are indebted in the future. So consumption is increasing. With the temptation that companies make through advertising and so on, the people are consuming more. And they can consume more because there is monopoly. They have more money through monopoly. The sources of monopoly is resources that are not open for all, permissions that are not open for all, knowledge that is not open for all. The minute we have monopolization, we will have different classes of people. The minute we have different classes of people, the industry will react by producing a palace, for example, that 100 people work in that palace for a rich man, and that is one of the sources of polluting the environment, because rather than consuming, let's say, 10 cubic feet of concrete, he's consuming 1,000 because he has a big palace, and so on. I respond to your questions, but if you think of it like this, you will find that inhibiting people from the access to these three sources created classes, and there is no way, whether through socialism, capitalism, that we can defeat this. The only method is opening the door for people for these through. And let me put a small challenge here for you. I challenge you to give me a method that brings the people to a closer income other than opening the door for others. And we need people to be closer income in their income, because then they cannot hire others to consume more. So their consumptions will be as much as they can consume, no more. Now we consume much more than we can afford through credits or through being a very rich person. This is, I think, the only method to solve our sustainability. We are not short in sustainability of new ideas how to make a building sustainable. Many research is going into bringing new ideas of solving solutions for sustainable environment. We need a method of those ideas to be used in a wider scale, where everybody participates in reaching sustainable environment. Now imagine somebody living in the Vatican or Bahrain, small country, and he wants to work, and he cannot go outside his country. What can he do? There is only few jobs available for him. If he is in Qatar, he can work in few jobs. But if the whole Middle East is open for him to work, if he likes hot area, he may go to Sudan and animals, cows, whatever, he can go there. If he likes cold weather, he can go to northern Africa in the mountains. So the larger the area, the more the people can move around, the most likely they will do something that they like, because there is so much resources with so much diversity, and because the people are so different in their capabilities, in their habits, in their hobbies. When they do the thing they like, because the area is so large, they will be more inventive and they will be consequently more productive, and they can produce more with working less. This is my second argument. So when we open borders, and that would help sustainability, because nations won't fight each other. Nations won't fight each other. Now nations fighting each other because the rulers, I think, pushing them to fight. Do you want war? Of course no. Do you want war? No. Nobody wants war. Who wants war? Anybody of you want war? Nobody wants war. Why the people fight each other? Think of it. They are pushed by people who know each other. Bush knows the king of Saudi Arabia, he knows that, he knows this. They push each other. So if, and this is a dream, if borders are opened and people had the right to move from one place to another, and if they managed to do whatever they like, and because I'm sure most of you knows about Malthus theory, a theory that says the resources of the world will finish one day, because the resources are much less than the population growth. The resources increases numerically, the 2 becomes 4, 6, 8. The population increases geometrically, and the 2 becomes 4, 8, 16, and so forth. In the United States, there was 2 groups, Malthusians and anti-Malthusians. And there was very interesting debate between them. And there was a challenge from the anti-Malthusians to tell the Malthusians, give us the name of 10 minerals. After 10 years, they looked at these 10 minerals, the price of these 10 minerals went down. So this means that before oil finish, we will come out of the oil age to another age, maybe wind power or whatever. So the resources in the earth will never finish. Because the resources in the earth will never finish, and if we allow the people to move around to take the materials that they need to produce, and when they do that, our consumptions will become much less than today, because there is no classes of people. The people becoming closer in their class. And what happens then? Cities, huge cities, metropolitan cities will disappear. Why? Because those cities are living on the centralized decision-making process. You see a Ministry of Agriculture, they don't produce a single rice. They just produce paperwork. Look at any Ministry of Defense. They don't fight, they just make decisions. The soldiers fighting in the borders. Capital cities only consume. They are parasite cities. Consume from what others do. So we'll have huge cities like New Delhi, like Riyadh, like Cairo, they consume more, in which the people working, the insolvent people working, and the goods goes to them to enjoy it. There is little interaction between the people producing goods except through the central authority. But if what I'm calling for, the traditional wisdom, was utilized, we'll have different situation in which the groups manufacturing things together as partners, they will communicate with each other, and conventions, as I showed you, conventions of discharge rainwater, conventions of industry will appear in the society. Let me give an example. Now the car is made by one company, Toyota, Ford, whatever. If the people became partners, the car will be dismantled into smaller groups, and it was like that before Fordism. Group of people make a battery, other group make the glasses, and so on. The people who make the glasses will make it with different specifications for different group of designers. The designers will come and say, I'll make a car, I want this type of glass, this type of battery, this type of window, this type, and they make a car. And the people can select the car in advance, I want this type of car with these specifications. So design process, I'll explain that in housing now, will take different direction. Not somebody design a car for a company and the company make hundreds of thousands of the same car, and we see the same cars in the street. No, the cars will be different. Think of the iPhone, for example. Now there is one iPhone for everybody with different colors at the back. Maybe I am an old man, and I'm staying home much. I don't need bigger battery. I need bigger speaker. Why not order iPhone with bigger speaker for me, because I am always sitting in the house with this battery, because I can use the electric outlet. A young guy, he's always around, like him, he needs a bigger battery, his sharp ears, he needs smaller speakers maybe. So the iPhone will be tailored for our different needs, but you cannot do that now, because you will be sued if you make an iPhone, because knowledge is patented. But of course you will say, but how we have to do that? But I'm saying We are trying to save the earth from coming climate change, from coming pollutions. And this is important. This issue should override all other issues. I think I should stop here, but just show you a few examples of how many people worked in this palace. How many hours of work was spent here? How many hours was spent to make this fancy car? I like these things. Don't think I don't like them. I like them. Everybody likes these things. But how many hours of human society's mind work was spent on these that could have spent on something else, in making housing for the homeless? I'm not saying that we should force the people to work free. Those people who invented this fascinating car, I'm not saying that I'm forcing them to make houses for the homeless. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if we open the door for people, when the people becomes closer in their income, the manufacturers of this car will not find customers. So gradually the workforce will go to make everybody happy and everybody free. We finished the first lecture. Thank you. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. It's now time for debate.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Professor, particularly for his challenging lecture, to planners in particular. As you know, I like challenging lectures and positions. The more challenging they are, the better for us.
Yes.
So thank you very much. And if there are questions or comments?
First, I would like to ask you about the first part of the lecture. The idea of borderless society, much more than that, on like nationless society, in which people could move freely around the globe, find themselves, settle wherever the resources and the abilities match with them, is really a wonderful ideal. I do agree that, of course, it is impossible not to agree that the idea of nationalism that promised us liberation, that promised us freedom, that promised us services, nationalism was required to become the framework that could serve the people, to give them what they need: education, infrastructure, housing, confidence in the security in their lives. However, as we can all see, nationality turned into something that, instead of serving us, we're serving it. Although it's not just nationality, it's also municipality and all the institutions in our lives. On one hand, we have this Piazza Leonardo da Vinci, which is beautiful here, that could not have been created by us as human, nurtured like this, developed like this, and we enjoy it. On the other hand, the price is really heavy. We have to face very severe differences between people, very poor, very rich. We have to be, for example, we have to face wars and violence for the sake of nationalism. However, when you look at the human history, humans were always creating categories, groups. Throughout history, you can see that it was sometimes language, sometimes religion, that divided between people. Now it is called nationalism. isn't the promise to be better without nations? Wouldn't it collapse as well? Because we are creatures that create frameworks. We need frameworks. And when we have frameworks, we have borders between frameworks. And then again, we fall into this trap, which is impossible to escape.
Well, it's a difficult question to answer. And when I said Earth without borders, I'm dreaming. And I know very well that is impossible. That's why I said I have to be very bold to take the challenging question. This is a challenging question. And that's true. What you say is that through the banner of nationalism, a body is created who will use that banner for its own advantages, and gradually we have borders. I don't know what's the answer to that, but I believe at the age of modern technology with internet and so on, that if the people had power, at least borders start breaking between certain nations, like Europe becomes one. North America becomes one, Latin America becomes one, and gradually. And then when they see that they're exchanging goods and it's good for all of them, they need laborer here, they need talent here, they need, gradually they'll say, okay, let's not fight. Gradually it will change, I think, because the major challenge now, the major enemy now is climate change. Is pollution. That's the enemy. They have to unite against it, and they're starting to do that through conferences and so on. Unless the people, I think maybe the hope through constitutions in Europe, in the States, maybe that's an answer, because the people, if they have power, they know that the politicians are lying. But I know very well I'm dreaming. But I made the point to tell you that the larger the area, the more people move around, the more likely they will find a job that they like, a place that they like more, and they will produce more. And the more number of people are producing, the more goods with less work for us, and everybody becomes happy. And that's a dream, utopia. But if we see this is the utopia and we go to it, that's why I argued that if we gave people access to resources, knowledge, and permissions, it will work. One of the major arguments against my argument is that knowledge. How do you make knowledge public? I always use the pharmaceutical industry. Look what's happening there. They're cheating the people to buy medicine that they don't need. They push people away from natural resources to treat themselves, to manufacture things, and so on. How they manage to do that? This is the question. Simply because of the patent. The more secret the patent they have, the more they can advertise it, the more they can treat people. But if it's public, and they know if anybody opens the secret of this invention, they will lose the market. There won't be huge companies that make billions, if not trillions. And I saw a video, just open the YouTube and see how some congressmen are totally bought by the pharmaceutical industry. I know it's a dream, but also I think the border nation is because there is paid soldiers. When I looked at the Islamic legal system from the beginning, people are not forced to fight. People are requested to fight if their lands were taken. So worship is, or fighting enemies, is not a duty with a salary. It is worship. Like people worship in the church, in the mosque, they worship God in fighting. And this does not happen often if their land is taken, otherwise they will not fight. What happened is that they made the different dynasties from the Umayyad, Abbasid, they made the army paid job. To do that, they took money from they taxed the people to pay the soldiers. The minute they had soldiers, they could control the society and push people around. If you don't have in the central government so much money, then you cannot have the secret police, you cannot have the army, you cannot have these lavish expenses that keep the power, the nationalist power, alive. What makes them alive and powerful? Taxes from people under the banner that will protect you from the enemy. If they don't have money, they cannot make army. And this needs another lecture, and I'm sure everybody disagrees with me. We need another lecture for that. That people should fight if their land were taken. If their land were not taken, they are not forced to fight. They could fight if they want, as worship. But it's not a duty that there is no job that are paid for a person like a soldier. I read that clearly in the traditions of the Prophet and the Quran and so on. It is a worship. It is not paid job. The minute we think like that, you cannot think of an army that is organized by taxpayers.
Mentioning the borders, removing the borders, so I can say that you want kind of world government to
the what?
World government.
No, against that totally.
System. If we are talking about removing borders, because totally we are having open nations. And the second one, related to the second part of the lecture, talking about
let me explain this first, then we go to the second one. Okay, so I keep forgetting always. Okay, I didn't say doesn't mean
One follow-up, because it was mentioned several times. If we give the people knowledge, if we give the people
power,
by we, who are like, is the public state or like us as the mankind in general?
Yes, okay, good question. When you said we give the people the power, the people, not the state. The state represents the people. When you say the people, the general people, the public. Now, if I said that no borders, that doesn't mean the whole global earth should be one country with one government controlling it. That's impossible. What I'm saying is that when the people had access to resources, knowledge and permissions, usually they settle, logically, they will settle in the places that there is material wealth under the ground, above the ground. In that case, they migrate from place to another to find the best place for them, and they will settle. And they will settle there, but they don't have the right to stop people coming from other places to their space. But that does not mean that there is a central state who can arrange this. The minute there is central state, there is monopoly. There is monopoly, there is different classes of people. Then we fall into a trap of unsustainability. But now, the question is, what is the role of the government? The role of the state, I think, is two. If people had disputes, clear that dispute between them. Because if you free the hands of people to move, sometimes they may collide. But the more you give the people power to move, because the earth is so huge and they are spread around, most likely the collision between them will be less. The more you squeeze them in smaller spaces, in cities, you need more, because there is more collisions, you need more laws, more. That's why the United States has the highest percentage of lawyers, of courts, of jails, of because they invented all kinds of laws that put the people against each other, hoping for saving the resources. But if though they thought differently, they could have had different situation. Your second question?
Following the,
Yeah, yeah.
I make about the first part, but wasn't the situation in the past that we had no borders somehow, but ruling states, and I think the possibility of individuals traveling was, I think it was right, like if someone in the past was traveling from a country to another as an individual, it wasn't something impossible, but maybe in a larger group, then it's what starts fights in terms of fighting for resources. That's why I'm saying if we're talking about no borders and different governments, every government will be trying to protect its resources. But if we're talking about no borders and sharing resources, then we are talking about one major state controlling all the resources.
This is controlling the resources, and I come back to the point: no control for the. Let me finish. No control for resources, because we don't. If we don't control resources, and the resources is far more than what we need, when the people are closer in their income, they will consume less. So nobody will care about the resources, like taking air. You can take as much air as you want, but you cannot take more than what you need because you don't have 4 lungs, you have only 2. Okay? This is how it works with resources, I think, because when the people has access and everybody is sufficient, they won't fight for resources. But the minute we think of a government with the responsibility that guarding the resources, like you make a state to guard the air, nobody can take without its permission, the air will have a value. Then the resources now has so much value. Through open market, I think, the materials will decide its value, and it will not become scarce. Now, what type of governments we need? I think we only need a government. And if you look at the Prophet's tradition and how he lived, he never paid money for anybody to work for him. There's no money paid. So people were working voluntarily. If the people are relative in their income, and some people have more income, that's what I think, little bit more income than what they need, and the market is not filled with tempting advertisement and so on, and tempting goods, what happened? They will have surplus. They will donate. And that's how it worked in the Islamic city. People donated for hospitals, mosque, education, all the public good education was awqaf, was from the donation of the people, not from the state. And they did very well because the people had surplus money, but where does it go? They want good deeds, they paid for the hospital and so on. With less government size, because the government is not paving roads, people did it. They're not educating the people, people did it, hospitals and so on. And if you think of it, that's the right way of doing it. The best universities in the world are private universities, are not owned by the government. Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Oxford, Cambridge are not run by the states. The best highways are private. Boeing, private. Apple, private. The private companies advancing our world, not the states.
Other questions? First.
Okay.
Again, the first lecture. I think you're going to have a lot of questions about that part. It looks like this idea that everybody has the same money. It comes from a presumption that we all are very good to each other. That is, that we all want to help each other, and we can trust each other, which is, I think, is a very good idea, but maybe a little bit too optimistic. I mean, as even evolutionary as a species, all we want to do is survive, and that causes us to be a little bit mistrustful of each other. And maybe if we all have the same income, we might always want to have more. And I'm I don't know how we, without a system that helps to govern that, how can we trust each other, to help each other, benefit each other, without trying to benefit ourselves and our immediate circle, families, or nation, or whatever. I mean, it sounds very good, but how can we go in that direction?
I think very good question, and I will take some time to explain that, which is okay. It's important. Now, I didn't say people are same level of income. There could be, one could be 10 times richer than the other because he's powerful 10 times or smarter 10 times, but not 1 million times, like the distance between me and Bill Gates. No? Okay? That does not exist. They are relatively close to income, and they don't have to like each other or love each other. Their interest to survive will push them toward cooperation. Now, if you look at the businesses that the people do, they don't do business together because basically they like each other, because their interest lies in making a new car, a new factory, a new shop. They come together to make a job. And here is something really that I didn't talk about, is the partnership. The production system, if we open the door for resources, knowledge and permissions, if the people want to survive and they have to produce goods, they have to work. Because there is no way of making money as we do these days of looping around the system. Now, for example, oil is owned by the state in some Gulf region. To take money from the states, you have to go around, you have to sometimes be hypocrite, sometimes even in the United States, for example, if you want to take a project, you have to lobby and so on. We know all this lobbying, all these dealings and wheelings under the table. If the people has to work, there is no way to make money, because you don't need permission from anybody. The resources in front of you, you have to work. The only way to become richer is to work. And when you work and you can buy things from your hard work, you don't buy so much because you don't have so much money. Now, people who manage to do lobbying and so on, and they make billions, and then we didn't talk about this, about the banking system now. You can make millions. One guy, when you know him, I forgot his name, when the UK changed its currency down up, he made 1 billion in one night. Okay, so there is things like this now. If you open the internet, if you open the internet, you will see all these kinds of dealings and wheelings of future selling, like bargaining on future goods, how much the oil will be next year and so on. At that time, there isn't these things because the people who are producing the goods are not capable of gambling with it because they have to sell it. So we're dealing in the level of people, not corporations. And the production system doesn't mean that it will be bad or lower quality, no. Through conventions, the people will make the good things. But they don't have to be nice to each other because their interests pull them to work together. And then gradually their values will change, their beliefs will change. If you pick up any person raised and lived in a socialist society, his mentality, his behavior different than one raised in a capitalist society. If we have another system, the people will be with a different behavioral system. They are not socialist, they are not capitalist, but they don't have to be nice to others. Just if they pursue their interest, and they know now if they work with their colleagues. There is something I did not explain, that it's so easy in the traditional system to work as partners, so easy to leave partnership and so on. A series of mechanisms, and it's in an Arabic book, the chapter called the Sharika, or company, how companies work. It shows how easy it is to leave a group, join a group. Certain mechanisms that create companies of different sizes. And we need always companies of different sizes, because the target is not to have a company with a size that it will have a lot of internal problems. I'm sure this point is not clear, but it is.
It's a difficult point to explain. I'm sure it's a difficult point to explain as well. And a second question.
Was another one or not?
Yeah, I had a question, but it's different to articulate every time because every answer of yours generates more questions. But anyway, it's just when I came a little bit late, but he was talking about the Fordism and the idea of, this strategy of managing the world, which is more related to capitalism. But every frame of work needs another frame of reference, socio-political frame of reference to work with. So what you're working on, I cannot understand in the old Islamic period or something like that. But nowadays, we have different models, like German model, Japanese, the American one. And as far as we can see, I think the Japanese one looks quite similar with the small nuclear groups who are working together in a more horizontal way that's not very central. But it's right now it's crashing so hard that I think doesn't have that bright future to it. But on the other hand, the capitalist one, there is an argument to the idea of that people having almost similar income, or not similar, but the income is distributed to a normal distribution, because usually it doesn't work this way. It works. This is my opinion. It works to a Pareto distribution, which the more you have money, it will be easier for you to get more money. And the more you have power in general, even it can be symbolic power. If you are a professor, you are easier to get access. It's easier to get access for you for more information, to get better at your job than me, maybe, because just you have symbolic power. You are more welcome in places than me. So if you have more of something, it's easier for you to even get more. So I think it's not that easy to go to this situation where the income is distributed in a normal graph. I don't know, but I think at least in the modern frame of reference, the modern socio-political situation, it's not that easy to work this way, or not. I don't know, but this is what I have in mind.
Yeah, this is typical capitalist answer.
Yeah, this is
exactly. You said the more money you have, the more power you get. This is let me finish.
Even if it's, I don't know. I first noticed this before I started even trying to read about or investigate the idea. But the point is, let's say I'm a student. It happens even with symbolic power, as I was just saying. If I'm a student and I participated in a competition and I won, and then I participated in 3 other workshops, and another student did it, or he came, or he maybe joined the university 1 year after me or something like that. My possibility to be accepted in a new workshop will be much higher than him just because I have more on my CV. And it usually works like this. So it's even with symbolic power, not only with income, even with, I don't know, it usually works this way. This is from my point of view as, I'm a young person who doesn't have a lot of experience. So I just want your counter argument to work with is how do you think it would work?
You finished?
Yeah.
You promise not to disrupt, okay?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's okay.
Agreement. You can't talk, I will be silent. Finished?
Yes.
And I promise. Okay. This is a typical capitalist answer, because power has resources. To become powerful, you should have resources, knowledge, official in the government, the right of extracting certain minerals in certain places. So the more money you have, the more power you have. Let's say you had from the government the right to extract aluminum from this site. You invest in that site with millions. Then for 20 years or maybe 100 years, you had the right to extract mineral from that site. Then you become richer. You send your son to Harvard. Through lobbying, he'll become the vice president. It could happen. this is how things operate. And I know it's difficult to understand the situation, that in the beginning of any poor person, look at his power, where it came from. You will realize that maybe he had a position in the government. What I'm calling for, there is no government that controls the fate of people. Maybe he had the right to extract materials from somewhere. This will not happen. Maybe he has the right to import some goods. Other merchants are not allowed to import that goods because there is borders. Maybe he had the right to study in certain expensive universities. Others did not have the power or the money, so that could happen. If you think of it this way, let me take the example of education. Now, our educational system based on governments that finance through taxes the people to make schools of same quality curriculum. So we have the same product of the students. Then when he goes to the university is based on income from rich people. So you have fancy universities, lavish universities that can give you higher education than others because they have better laboratories. If what I call for happens, this thing will not happen. Why? Because such universities will not be limited for certain classes of people because there is no classes of people. And those universities are the product of donations from people. And even I go further. It may not be universities like universities. It can be, he is a very famous professor, he will give you the degree. People will come and study under him. Maybe, I don't know. A fantastic surgeon, he can make his own hospital with his group of people. And certain surgeons can work together to make their own hospital. People, because they are close in their income, donate to this hospital that will give other people medication or surgery for reasonable price or whatever. So this whole concept of money, making money, does not exist because money at the outset is not an end in itself. It's a media. And it does not exist in this surplus fashion that we see. It's long subject to explain, but we have society with less amount of capital moving around with more goods that exist in our environment. Doors, tables, and so on. Our societies now is the opposite. We have so much money, virtual money. Sometimes you hear that the stock market lost 20 billion. Okay? Well, the cow is the same in the earth. The grass is the same. The chairs are the same. Nothing is lost. What is lost? Some people lost virtual money from the internet. But reality in the world, nothing is lost. Everything is the same. It is lost when some people, because the owner of a company lost his money, he closed the factory, then these people are jobless. It is still operating under the capitalist system. The example, for example, if the student is failed in this test and passed another test and had the chance to go to better university, is based on the educational system that judge the people on their mathematics or physics ability, and not on schools that produce students who are clever in certain areas. Now, our system based on math and physics, for example, why is it that? Why not on carpentry or making music? Why not? At that time, we'll have diverse schools with diverse production of students. That's not controlled by any state. So there is no one curriculum for all. Then the judgment of the person, depending on certain class of exams, will not be the tool to judge people. He is better than that. Because the industry, because what's important is survival, to live. We have to buy goods, we have to produce goods. The system is based on manufacturing goods, in making goods. So it's totally, I cannot answer that. It's written in 350 pages in Arabic, unfortunately. It's called الفصل والوصل. You know Arabic. Go to الفصل والوصل. Its chapter talks about how our modern societies developed a system that pulls the people together to create problems. And the traditional wisdom that if we use it, it's not only Islamic, it's in all cultures. Okay? Pull the people together for production and push them away from each other, not to collide with each other.
I have a question on the second part of the lesson, because I'm really busy with this kind of topic. So I think in your first lecture yesterday, you showed fabulous examples on how this kind of city that we love is not produced and conceived by one single mind, but by really a multiplicity of unpredictable and uncontrollable action.
Today I did the opposite.
Different people. Yes, and today what I thought, and I think you are a very good designer actually, but you try to reproduce this. And I think it's impossible because this is not a product of one person, it's a product of many people, which is basically unpredictable. So maybe as architects now we think in rooms, but maybe in 10 years rooms won't be part of our lives anymore. I don't know.
Yes.
So my question is, how do you think we can use maybe part of this work and to set the ground for unexpected growth or unexpected change without designing it? Because I think these cannot be designed.
Well, that's an interesting question, very beautiful question. Yesterday I showed something, today I did the opposite. Yesterday I said the people should have the power, that the environment, beautiful environment, and beauty is the outcome of people voting on it because they reproduce that good solution and so on. Today I showed you design, which is exactly the opposite. I clarified maybe in the beginning that this is within our capitalist system, at least to give the people the chance to participate, although it's not guaranteed it's a good solution, but it will work better than designing a housing project with 1,000 similar units with one or two types. At least we will give the people the chance to exercise their own power in their own environment. But I don't believe this is an ultimate solution, because this is a capitalist solution. And what I showed yesterday and the first lecture, anti-capitalist. But what I proposed in design, it is a capitalist solution. But what can I do as an architect? If somebody hired me in a capitalist society, come design 200 houses, what do? I have to do something. At least I give them the chance to participate. But I'm convinced this is not the right answer. The right answer is the existence of conventions that are well developed from the people's participation. Now here is an interesting question about beauty. Beauty now is defined again by the media, by capitalism, who have more power, more wealth, can say this is beautiful, and he keep showing it again and again and again, and the people will like it. In the traditional environment, if the people had power, the result of beauty is not the media. It's the people themselves by voting. If somebody did a certain window and I liked it, I did it again in my house. Someone else did it gradually, as if we are voting that this is the best window. And gradually it will improve, and then we'll have the perfect window. That's outcome of voting of people, that they order it freely to put it in their houses. And if you think of it this way, everything goes, clothes and so on, that through the people's voting. And I think our societies are now very much distorted in terms of beauty.
So with respect to this and to the idea of people knowing, copying from one another, learning by looking and implementing. In a way, our iPhones are really providing us the ability to see not just our neighbor's window, but to see an enormous part of other places and to copy them and to learn from them. In a way, we have this paradox. On one hand, we have enormous amount of knowledge accessible to us, enormous amount of solutions for our small problems, for bigger problems, for new ideas that are accessible to us through the internet, through the iPhone and the computers and everything. On the other hand, we see a very fast structuration inside these elements. Suddenly we know that there are very large companies and powerful people that control the idea. So it's not really that we are accessible to a lot of information. We're sometimes channeled to specific solutions. So how can we escape this duality of on one hand, be able to, because it seems to me sometimes that what you are suggesting by looking at the city, seeing one window and adopting it to ourselves, it's simply a different way of reproducing information, whereas we are now far away. We already have a very complicated manner of accessing information. However, this channel is now controlled by the powerful. So we live in this duality. We have access to information, whereas because of the abundance of information, we are somehow blocked.
Yeah. Let me explain this question. Very, very interesting. What she's saying is that there is so much information that we are getting from certain, although it's so much, which will give us much freedom to decide, it is somehow controlled by certain agents like Facebook, like and so on. Very interesting question. I think the answer, okay, is the following. First of all, our filters in our heads will be far more improved gradually. We as societies now are shocked with this massive new technology of massive information. Our filters are not yet developed in a way we skillfully can tell this is good, this is bad. And this needs time to develop through, I'm sure, individuals who will fight back, like Greenpeace and so on, but Greenpeace on the intellectual level, not on the environmental level, that be careful, this is good, this is bad, this is damage, okay? I think this is one promising method. Another answer is that because of the monopoly, those companies like Facebook and so on has control of our information. If there is no monopoly that anybody can make Facebook using Facebook's exact method, it will open up the door for more companies that they compete, they have to give you good service, honest service and so on. This is what can I say, but of course new conditions create new situations that are difficult to answer.
No, it's
impossible.
a point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much to Professor Akbar. For coming and for this very challenging lecture. I think the point is not to totally agree, partially agree. The point is to take seriously the challenge, particularly as regards resources, permissions, and knowledge that are the three main points, independent from different positions. So we will come back on this. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you for coming.